I'm William Horsley. I'm the CFOM International Director and co-founder. And before that, I was working for the BBC for 35 years as an international journalist. So my title is about 2 steps forward and 1 step back, an overview of the normative frameworks and their real life impact regarding press freedom. I began with, you can see the picture on screen is myself with Jackie at a fairly signal event in Vienna in 2012, which was the...
Sorry, William, we can't see your slides.
Oh, for goodness sakes. I'm sorry. I thought you'd done that, Jingrong. I beg your pardon.
Oh, sorry. So I'm going to share now. Yeah, you carry on and I'm going to share.
Thank you. So you're seeing the picture of myself and Jackie Harrison with the Deputy Director of UNESCO launching the UN Plan of Action at the time of the launch, and we're presenting a statement from London, which was the result of a symposium we held to try and set the agenda. So we have been there from the ground floor with that rather core initiative in the in that field. So second slide, I've changed mine. Yes, so I thought it were useful, I hope you're seeing it. Before the pivotal year of 2012, the global texts, I've just run through them. I can share these slides so they don't have to go through them in detail, but obviously 75th anniversary now of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, essential instruments, the International Covenant in particular, the important declaration of Southern African journalists at Windhoek, which launched the idea of World Press Freedom Day, and then the arrival of the special procedures appointments, especially the rapporteur on freedom of expression and opinion, the UN Security Council resolution, the first one mentioning the need to protect journalists in armed conflict as civilians, the UPR, Universal Periodic Review process. All member states of the UN have now been through it 3 times, and the Daniel Pearl American Freedom of the Press Act, which was a pioneer of its kind. Go to the next one, please. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the screen myself. I'll assume it's changed. From 2012 was a pivotal year because you see this quotation here from Christian Amanpour that they want to shut us up. Journalists are being targeted. Look at the statistics. They're killing the messenger. And she mentions different countries around the world where that's the place. So no-go areas are growing, and the international media are very concerned they're unable to do their job, and it's extremely dangerous. In 2012 was also the highest single year recorded death toll of 124, and the UNESCO has confirmed that that was the year from which point each year the media situation and safety of journalists situation was getting worse. Next, please. So the landmark agreements and progress since 2012, just to summarize, UN resolutions began being adopted every year in the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council. There was additional ones on issues like right of access to the internet in that period. 5 years ago, the review of the 5-year review of the UN Action Plan forged this closer partnership between the Paris-based UNESCO and Geneva-based human rights parts of the UN. Resolution 2020 of the UN Security Council highlighted specifically the dangers of transnational violations, and there was, of course, the new Security Council resolution as well, talking about attacks on journalists being a war crime. Then the Sustainable Development Goals, which for the first time brought issues of not just media freedom, but the rule of law into the development agenda of the world, particularly SDG 16, which you can see dealt with access to information and justice as well, and the indicators there related to it, which has not been a great success, I can say, monitoring cases of killing and kidnapping and so on of journalists and others. And the NGOs have tried to refine that to make it more effective, including University of Sheffield. Next, please. So then, very soon afterwards, the United Nations started to focus on impunity because it emboldens perpetrators to silence critics again. Again, that was articulated clearly by UNESCO, by the special rapporteurs, and it caught on very quickly. On the 2nd of November of 2013, 2 French journalists were killed in horrific circumstances by armed rebels in Mali, and with extraordinary speed, within 6 weeks, the UN General Assembly had adopted a resolution condemning all journalists' killings and declaring the 2nd of November International Day to end impunity for crimes against journalists, a really extraordinary development. And of course, the following year, we saw the kidnapping and killing on video of the 2 American journalists. And as I mentioned, that Security Council resolution, again, on war crimes. It's important to note that the regional bodies, particularly in Africa, in the Inter-American system and Europe, have contributed to the setting of higher standards of protection in law, in particular compliance with positive obligations, which are operative in each of those areas to protect journalists, first against known threats, so putting in place effective means of protection when known threats should be known, and effective investigations of perpetrators to bring them to justice, those 2 areas. Council of Europe in 2015, the member states were unwilling to apply a formal monitoring process despite the decline in press freedom situation. And so instead, they agreed an online platform for the safety of journalists as a sort of early warning and rapid response mechanism, which has taken off. It was the first continent-wide initiative of its kind. And it has been very formative, as we'll see, in policy making. So 15 major NGOs cooperating with the Council Secretariat, with the approval of the member states themselves, that messages go each for each alert, and there is pressure for the member states to respond, not just with a written response, but with action. In 7 years, there have been some 1,600 alerts, or each one is verified by the partner organizations. It's got a formidable database, and the recommendations of the partners, there will be an annual report by the 15 partners coming out in February or March next year, have considerable influence over Council of Europe and EU policy making. And 2 years ago, the African digital platform was launched. It does not have the same governmental backing as the European one, but you can see there a quote from the chair of the African Editors Forum, pointing out why it's really important. It's the old CNN effect. If it's known and people can see it, then there is a chance of heading off the attack or the threat. I thought I'd draw attention to the mobilization by the Council of Europe, not the favorite organization of some governments in Europe, because it is the treaty organization for the rule of law and human fundamental rights. But after all these years of pressure and an important change of mind within the councils, the policy-making committees of the Council of Europe, in favor not just of standard setting, but of implementing those standards. And Europe, of course, is a world leader in this, to launch a 5-year campaign called Journalists Matter, with very large resources going into it. It was launched in Riga, Latvia, in October, a frontline state, of course, of aggressive Russia. The rationale being as had been decided both in a summit of the Council of Europe leaders earlier in the year and a couple of years ago at a ministerial conference meeting, to reverse the decline in journalist safety.
William, sorry, you have 5 more minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Media freedom, because it is so intimately tied up with wider democratic backsliding. And it's based on a really seminal sort of Bible status document, 2016 Committee of Ministers recommendation on the safety of journalists and protection of journalism, which calls in particular for regular and thorough reviews of legislative frameworks to repeal harmful laws and practices, and a lot of protocols attached. So the main point is the implementation of the 3 Ps: protection of journalists against attack, prevention by those legal frameworks, and the prosecution pillars. And the key to the Council of Europe campaign is to try to devolve this to the member states, and get in each of them, there are at least a dozen or so in Europe now do have national committees, national journalist safety plans to strengthen protections in the way that are most apposite in those countries. Important to look at the global safety trends of the, it would show first that the number of fatalities of journalists in conflict areas, which was overwhelmingly the majority some years before, has since 2016, it's gone the other way, and it's much more dangerous, or more killings take place in countries where journalists get tangled in with covering politics, crime, particularly human rights abuses, and authoritarian governments sometimes themselves or by proxies will remove those troublesome voices. The other safety trends to mention: fewer deaths, but more harassment and intimidation. It's a familiar theme. Slaps and so on. I mentioned here the Thomson Reuters Foundation survey of this year, and the chilling, the global study done by the ICFJ a couple of years ago on online harassment of women journalists. You see the outstanding data there, and for male journalists, the number is at least equal, but the severity is particularly bad for female journalists. UNESCO made this assessment in November of last year of the impact of the 10 years, and of course it's quite self-congratulatory. Over 50 national protection mechanisms, those digital platforms in 2 continents, global impunity rate. This, I think, is the signal success, down nearly 10% over that period. The Media Defense Fund has assisted thousands of journalists. Many would say that's far from being enough, and widespread, enormous programs of training all those categories, police, lawyers, judges, and so on. So my final reflections, there's a lot that you could draw out of this, but it's important to note that at that meeting in Vienna in November, where there was a gathering really of the government side, UNESCO, and the non-government, that the assessment by the NGOs was much darker. And there was, in fact, an incident, and there was some bad blood during that session, which I think is a very bad omen for the future, because there's been such great momentum to this, and I think there is a possibility of it running out. That has to be a concern. The Russia effect affects everybody. Russia stepping over the line with the invasion of Ukraine, being expelled from the Council of Europe, creating this model of physical and military aggression combined with mis and disinformation on a major scale as a national policy. But it has also woken up, as you see, the other member states of the Council of Europe in quite a significant way, and it's a matter of making that work. The existential threats, which Gillian Phillips of The Guardian, their legal advisor for many years,
William,
pointed
sorry,
out to,
one more minute, please wrap up.
I
Thank you. Sorry.
understood, has pointed to not just the forest of legal constraints and threats and so on in a country like the UK and elsewhere, but the technological revolution, the AI revolution, and human behavior patterns, which has lost, in danger of losing a generation of young people to the idea of consuming serious and curated news. So that's my summary. I will try and share some of the links to this, which may be just for people's convenience and reference. And I hope I'll go back to the screen now. And thank you very much, Jing Rong, for looking after my files.